This spring I set in motion an experiment around air prune beds on our driveway to grow trees from seed. And in this video, midsummer, I'd like to do a review, see how things are going. Definitely a few issues here or there, but overall it's been really exciting. So stick with us, I'm going to do a mid-season review of how these are performing for us. Overall, they're definitely working. In fact, right behind me, I've got 2 boxes of hazelnuts that are growing like crazy. Now, what I'm going to skip in this video is describing in detail how these are built. I'm going to link here as well in the description to that first video, and I'd encourage you to check that out if you're interested in seeing how these were made. You can see the hazelnuts are growing really well. The English walnuts are growing well. As a theme, the beds that are deeper, that had the initial 8-inch deep box with a 6-inch riser, so a whole lot more soil, overall those are doing much, much better. The boxes that are just the 6-inch 1 foot by 2 foot mobile beds, which for the most part are set to chestnuts, have had some real stress. Still many, many trees, but I think by the fall I'll have lost 10 to 15% of these from heat stress. We've had some days up in the mid-90s, sitting on asphalt in the sun. That's a pretty tough scenario. I think my main takeaway is if you're in a much hotter climate than New York State and have limited access to irrigation, so in other words, like us, we only use collected rainwater. I've only watered these containers 3 or 4 times this season. We're in early August, this has been a dry summer. The smaller boxes have definitely suffered as a result of that. If you had a sprinkler system and you're in a cooler climate, you should have none of these issues. But something to be aware of, you need water for these, duh, in a way. But the deeper beds, some of these I've only watered once or twice and they're completely fine. I would suspect if we had an average or moist summer, we could get away with the deeper beds being unwatered the whole season. Another thing you can see as an issue, something to keep in mind, the stapler I used and or the quality of the staples, subpar. And in a lot of spots, the 1/2-inch hardware cloth has come loose as a result of the staples falling out. So now I've got to make sure in the fall that we collect all the staples. I'll bring a magnet out and think through either sturdier staples, or should I use a brad nailer, or some sort of way with batten strips. I think these cages overall will need to be redesigned. This plywood treatment, it's nice to reuse trash material, but I don't think these are going to last super long. Another issue, positive, negative, I'm not sure, is now that these trees are growing with such gusto, in particular these hazelnuts, I did a lot of weeding early on. It was easy when the plants were tiny to be able to pull the lids off, do weeding, and put the lids back on. Now, if I were to take a lid off, and I think today might be the day that I try doing it, I can't imagine that I can put this lid back on these plants anymore. The reason I've left them on so long is because chipmunks, red squirrels, wild creatures, a seedling nut tree or shrub, even this far in the season, sometimes they may still go in, dig in the roots to pull the nut off of the stem. And so I'm going to take a risk, I'm going to do a trial, and one of these I'm going to pull off. And I suspect I'll probably injure at least 1 or 2 of these shrubs on the way out. Ooh. It's got to come off at some point. And so I'll retire that for the summer. And I can see in here, if you come closer, you can see this box may have, somewhere between 200 and 400 seedling hazelnuts. There's certainly some in here, there are probably even a few that'll pass away from lack of resources. This is sown way too tightly overall, but that's also added resiliency around dealing with the heat and the dryness. The trees in here that end up being 2 or 3 feet tall in their first season, I'll sell or will plant out, and the remaining we can put back into beds for next year. But that's a design hurdle or thought for next season. Do I only sow in the interior of the bed so that we can take the lids on and off more? Probably I would do it the same way and then just see if at by August we can take the lids off, add some cinnamon or crushed garlic down on the soil and see if that gets them the rest of the season. I'll be watching this box every day to make sure the chipmunks don't come in and start digging them up. Recap is the quality of the construction of these lids with low-cost staples, not so great. I would need to do that better. If you're starting from scratch, maybe you want to consider investing the time and energy and some money in hardwood caps with really nice quality wide-headed nails or some sort of really stout staple. That's an upgrade for next season. I need to make sure I plan for a lot more watering for these smaller, more mobile air prune beds. Keep an eye on things when we get above 90 degrees to make sure I water every day or every few days early in the morning. And think through making sure I keep really on top of weeds early in the season as the trees are small enough so that as they get too big to be able to take the lids off and on again, that all of the weeding is done. So my plan for next year, thorough weeding, deep mulch after all the trees have emerged, and then get the lid on and leave it for the rest of the season and know that it's going to be a tight fit. Overarchingly though, for $150-ish in parts, we'll get at least 1,000 trees, maybe 2,000 or more. Incredibly worthwhile even with those problems. If you've tried making these, share some pictures, share some notes, what's worked, what hasn't. And if you haven't tried, definitely encourage you to think about it for next year. Thousands of trees in a parking spot in one season, pretty worthwhile for all of us. Thanks for watching.